Beginning this month, South Africa assumed the presidency of the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group, taking over from Brazil. In a show of solidarity, several African countries gathered in Harare, with Zimbabwe hosting on behalf of the African Union to review the Brazil G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group. AU focal point for the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group and Director for Governance and Conflict Prevention at the African Union Commission, Ms. Patience Chiradza, emphasized the need for cooperation among AU member states in recovering assets.
From my perspective, we saw that the leadership of the Brazilian presidents to be able to balance the needs of all the stakeholders, because in these negotiations, you can't move if you don't agree. So you've got to agree on the text of the declaration. You've got to agree on the priorities and everything. And I think for us, what we look forward to South Africa do is to really push the African agenda, particularly on issues of asset recovery, because there is need for international cooperation for African Union member states to be able to recover stolen assets so that they can be used back home for development purposes.
South Africa Head of Special Investigating Unit and the current chair of G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group, Advocate Andy Mothibi, reviewed his country's priorities in the fight against corruption.
Our focus, our priorities are really four, and we believe that they will be shared by all African countries. Number one, just to conclude on the four priorities, number one is strengthening the public service. Number two, it's really to attend to the whistleblower protection. Number three is asset recovery. And number four is the inclusion of all stakeholders in the fight against corruption.
On the presentation at today's meeting was to highlight Zimbabwe's position as far as anti-corruption is concerned. You may notice that the meeting here is the G20 consultative group. And you may also be aware that Zimbabwe is not part of the G20. In fact, Africa is not part of the G20. However, the G20 group was able to allow the African Union to be part of the G20, and is now part of the G20 also, as including anti-corruption movements. So as a result of that, we have the presidency, which is now moved. Previously it was with Brazil, but with effect from yesterday, the 1st of December, South Africa has assumed chairmanship of the G20.
Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission chairperson Mr. Michael Reza is convinced that the involvement of the AU in the working group is critical to enhance Africa's voice in global governance initiatives. South Africa will be at the helm of G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group presidency for the next 12 months.